Well, if you always liked the Tata Tigor hatchback but wanted something with a bigger boot and a lot more cabin space, then the all-new Tata Tigor is a car that you should check out. What is this car all about? Well, essentially, it's a car which takes on the likes of the Maruti Suzuki Swift Dzire, the Honda Amaze, the Ford Aspire, the VW Ameo, as well as the Hyundai Accent in the already competitive compact entry sedan segment. So, is it worth a second look, or should you simply ignore it? We'll find out on the show today. Well, as soon as you step inside the cabin of the Tata Tigor, you will realize that the perceived quality levels inside the cabin are pretty good. The top end of the dashboard over here, as well as the top end of the door pads, are made from soft feel plastics. The overall quality and fit and finish is at par with the Maruti Suzuki Swift Dzire as well as the Hyundai Accent, but it is slightly behind the VW Ameo, which is the best car in terms of fit and finish in this segment. Well, special mention must be made of the infotainment system. Now, even though the screen over here isn't very huge, it is of course a touch screen, and the best part is that you can use a lot of apps over here connected to this system, and you can operate it via your cell phone. The other cool thing about the system is the speakers inside this car. Now, this car of course is powered by Harman speakers, which are phenomenal in terms of the overall sound quality, and the sound quality inside this car is very good. In fact, the stereo as well as the speakers could really do justice on a car from a much higher and a much more expensive segment. So Tata Motors has paid a lot of attention to detail in terms of the acoustics inside this car. Well, it is the small touches which make a big difference inside the Tigor's cabin to make it feel very special, as well as a little more upmarket and different from its rivals. One thing of course is these colored AC vents. The corner ones are colored in the body color, and the other thing is this soft feel opening for the glove box. It has a nice dampening effect when it opens, and that adds a little more personality to the cabin of the Tigor. Well, in terms of practicality, it's a good place to be in. You get these two nice bottle holders over here in the middle. You also get a big tray where you can keep your cell phone, your wallet, as well as your favorite fruity beverage. And you also get a nice tray where you can keep your cell phone. But the best place, of course, to keep this bottle is in the door bins, because Tata Motors has given it large enough door bins for those big 1 litre bottles. Well, Tata makes one of the best seats in the business, and along with the Maruti Suzuki Swift Dzire, the seats on the Tigor are really very good in terms of overall comfort. The support for the lower back is pretty good. You get these nice side bolsters, and the seat squab is both wide as well as long, which means that even the tallest of tall passengers will not be tired in this car, even if you are stuck in chock-a-block city traffic when you're driving back home. So overall, in terms of seat comfort, overall cabin ambience, as well as a rich features list, it is a pretty good car. Well, so a lot of you will buy this car simply to be chauffeur driven all day, and I have to say that the Tigor is pretty good in the backseat department as well. I have adjusted the front seat as always for my height and my driving position, and my height for reference is 5'10", and even then, as you can see, I have got good amounts of knee room. There's plenty of place below the front seats where I can keep my feet, and headroom is also more than adequate, which is very good considering that this car has a sloping roofline at the back, so headroom isn't compromised, and people who are around 6 foot in height should not really have too much of an issue, because even for me, who is 5'10" in height, I have about a couple of inches or 3 inches above my head, so not an issue in terms of headroom or legroom. And the seat comfort also is very good. The seat cushioning is just as good as the sofa at your home, and it is a wide car, which means you can sit 3 in comfort. There is a little bit of a lump in the floor panel, but it's not really too big, and the footwells also are pretty big enough for anyone who's sitting here to accommodate his feet. The other good point is that you get this nice armrest over here where you can of course keep a couple of beverages and really sit over here like the boss and attend those important calls, and your chauffeur can take care of the city traffic. Well, not only is the seat cushioning excellent, the backrest angle is really spot on, and the best part is that you get these huge windows, which means that you get a good view of the road outside, and the cabin does feel very airy because of these huge windows. And the best part is that the door opening is really wide, and the aperture to get in and out of this car is good. And also, it is a pretty tall car, which means that you don't really have to slouch in and crawl yourself into this car. You can simply walk into it. So the backseat of the Tigor really is one of its key strengths, and if you are someone who really does prefer to be chauffeur driven in, then you should definitely check these seats out. Well, in terms of boot capacity, the Tigor is the best in class. It offers you a boot capacity of 419 litres, 419, which is bigger than the Honda Amaze's 400 litre, as well as the Hyundai Accent's 407 litres. The only issue is that the loading sill is a bit too high and the aperture is a little narrow, and what that means is that if you have a big box to load into this car, it will be a bit of a struggle. So in that sense, the Honda Amaze as well as the Accent are still better, because remember, they have proper big opening lids, which mean that they have bigger apertures. But overall, this is a much bigger boot in terms of capacity. Well, the other big thing inside the Tigor's boot is of course the fact that there's a lot of attention to detail. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you pay closer attention, you will notice that Tata Motors has not used those traditional neck type hinges over here in the boot. They have used link arms over here. Not only do they go a long way in saving up space, but they're also lighter, and what that means is that you can of course put in those bigger boxes without too much of an issue, because remember, those hinges do take up space when you close the boot lid. Over here, that's not an issue. So overall, good attention to detail from Tata Motors in the boot lid department. Well, so the Tigor comes with the same set of engines which power the Tiago as well. So you get the same 1.05 litre diesel engine as well as the 1.2 litre petrol engine. Now the diesel makes about 70 bhp of power, which is slightly behind its rivals in the segment, and the petrol makes about 85 bhp of power, which is at par with most of its other rivals. Now both the engines are inherently pretty quiet and pretty smooth. The diesel does suffer from a little bit of clatter because remember, it is a 3-cylinder engine, so it does not have the same kind of refinement that traditional 4-cylinder engines offer, but that's quite okay because in the city it's very negligible. You can't really tell too much of the difference, but yes, when you take it out on the highway, you will feel that this engine could have had a little more power, because overtaking does get a little tiresome because you have to work the gearbox quite a bit to get the revs going. And the diesel engine also suffers from a little bit of turbo lag, which means that you have to keep it above 2000 rpm if you want the best juice out of it. So yes, it is a diesel engine which you have to operate with the gearbox very well, and that's because the engine makes its most usable and best power between 2 and 4000 rpm. So you will have to keep the engine between those two power figures. But that said, using the gearbox as well as the clutch on the diesel isn't a big issue, because the clutch is really very light and very smooth to operate. In fact, you will be thinking that you are driving a petrol. The clutch is so smooth, and the gearbox also has a nice and slick action to it. It's a positive gearbox. It has a very positive shifting action, and the throws also aren't very long. It has short and crisp throws. So overall, it is a gearbox which you will enjoy to use, even if you have to use it quite a bit. Well, the petrol engine makes most of its usable power towards the lower end of its rev band, which means that you don't really have to rev it too much. While yes, when you do rev the petrol engine hard, it does tend to become a little buzzy inside the cabin, but overall it's not really such a big deal, and it's not really a deal breaker, and the cabin is pretty well insulated from all the noise as well as vibration from both the diesel and the petrol motor. So it is a very decent and very comfortable cabin to be sitting in. Well, not only is the cabin insulated and isolated from the engine noise, the suspension also isolates you from most of the badly patched up roads out there. Well, some of those really sharp rumble strips and some of those really small speed breakers which can break your back in other cars in this segment will really not bother you when you are driving the Tigor, because this car simply glides over most of them. Well, the suspension is comfortable not only at slow city speeds, but even when you're doing faster speeds on the highway, even when you are doing speeds in excess of 100 kph, this car will offer you a lot of confidence, because it really does drive very well. It really is very stable and feels very rock solid. In fact, this is one of the few cars in this segment which does not tend to feel light when speeds go in excess of 100 kph. So Tata Motors really has found a sweet spot with the suspension setup of this car. In fact, I will stretch out my neck and say that the Tigor is the most comfortable car in terms of ride comfort in this segment. And when you couple that with the fact that the seats also on this car are really excellent in terms of cushioning and support, you really will realize that this is one of the best cars to drive in all day long. Well, the tires also go a long way in aiding the comfortable suspension, and the grip levels are very good as well. You will never be found wanting for grip. So the steering wheel on the Tigor is ultra light, and it really is a steering wheel which you can operate with a single finger. Of course, it is something that I would not recommend. So unlike a lot of motoring journalists who will complain about it being super light and not being a keen driver's steering wheel, most buyers will be quite okay with it, because it will be an easy car to park into that tight parking slot below your home. Well, so one big negative about the Tigor is the fact that this car will make you feel very nostalgic, and it will take you back a few years. Well, so how does the Tigor do that? Well, every time you open the door lock by pulling this lock over here, you will be reminded of the late 80s and the early 90s, because these door locks really are a piece of relic now. And well, Tata Motors should have definitely done something better than this and integrated these locks like they have done on the Bolt as well as the Zest, along with the door opening handles over here. So maybe that's something that Tata Motors should think about and improve in the next version of the car. Well, so along with the biggest boot, the Tigor also comes with a very comfortable cabin, a co-setting ride as well as a long list of features, not to mention its fuel efficient as well as punchy engines. And all this means that this is definitely a car that you should go ahead and check out at a Tata Motors dealership near you if you are in the market for an entry compact sedan. Well, but if you're not as convinced as I am about this car, you should also check out our review of the Swift Dzire versus the VW Ameo by clicking over here. And if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, do subscribe to it by clicking over here. It's bye for now and hope to see you soon.